So in this series, we're going to be talking about every single Led Zeppelin album in chronological order. And in this video, the band's iconic self-titled debut, Zeppelin 1, released on January 13th, 1969. So I checked out the review of Zeppelin 1 that was done by Rolling Stone back when the album came out. Zeppelin always had kind of like a famously contentious relationship with that magazine. And it's funny because the critic points out that Zeppelin at the time weren't really doing anything that unique. They were following this blues-heavy rock and roll trend that had been made famous by bands like John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, Cream, and Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and Jeff Beck's previous project, the Yardbirds. So the attitude is very much, here we go again, another British blues band. They do, of course, admit that Page is an exceptional guitar player, something that really couldn't be questioned after his long and storied career as a session musician to some of the biggest bands of the British invasion. They call Robert Plant's performance unexciting, that the vocals were long, drawn out, boring, and not as interesting as Rod Stewart. And overall, they called the record somewhat mediocre, in a sea of overwhelmingly iconic artists creating some of the best music ever written. Zeppelin 1 is undoubtedly the band's bluesiest album, and it does have a feeling of being a little bit detached. It's not that it lacked cohesion, it's that without having been a touring band together, slinging it in the clubs of London for years before they were signed, they didn't really have a solid style or direction or aesthetic that they wanted to go with yet. So they leaned on the traditional blues that they all agreed they wanted to emulate. It wasn't until future recordings that their sound, aesthetic, and overall personality of the band really came through as the members became more comfortable with each other and their playing and writing styles. For me, the standout on this album is always going to be Dazed and Confused, the song that has given me chills ever since I was a teenager with headphones on turned up all the way. The desperation of Robert Plant's droning cries over the crispiness of Jimmy's guitar, the haunting bass underneath it all, and there's nothing compares to the feeling that happens when John Bonham's drums first erupt into the composition. Communication breakdown and Good Times, Bad Times are pretty good too.